Mates, we have plenty to cover today, but we first want to thank you for joining us on FOXSOUL's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. You know, each day we can't wait to get behind this desk to take you on a journey across Black America. And we know there are a lot of places where you can go for news that focuses too narrowly on our blues. But here at FOXSOUL's Black Report, guess what? We aim to share stories that reflect our rhythm and blues, rich with informed perspective and analysis. Now on to WNBA star Brittany Griner's appeal. It's been denied by a Russian court today that upheld her 9-year prison sentence on drug charges in what U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan called, quote, another sham judicial proceeding. In a statement released by the White House earlier today, Sullivan also said, quote, President Biden has been very clear that Brittany should be released immediately. The president has demonstrated that he is willing to go to extraordinary lengths and make tough decisions to bring Americans home, as his administration has done successfully from countries around the world. The administration remains in regular touch with representatives of the families, and we continue to admire their courage in the face of these unimaginable circumstances. Griner says her biggest fear is that the prisoner swap will not take place and she could be forced to serve out the entirety of her sentence in Russia.
We will continue to keep her top of mind. To St. Louis now, where that city becomes the latest location of a school shooting as the community is grieving a student and a teacher who were killed in that attack. New information just out about what went down when police responded to the St. Louis school shooting. Now, according to police, officers made entry into the school about 4 minutes after the alleged shooter opened fire. They say the shooter was armed with more than 600 rounds of ammunition, and 2 people were killed along with the suspect. Police are still looking into a motive. And according to the Associated Press, Mississippi expects 5,000 more births each year as a result of the Supreme Court ruling denying abortion rights. Mortality data shows these children are more likely to die before their first birthday than in any other state. We're talking Mississippi here. If their mothers are Black, they're 3 times more likely to die due to childbirth than white women in Mississippi. Healthcare analysts, doctors, and expectant moms are expressing alarm, as they should, as options for maternity care continue to disappear.
That is just awful.
It is.
It is just awful. And on one hand, they want to eliminate access to abortions. They want to eliminate women's ability to assert their reproductive rights. And on top of that, they don't want to do anything about maternal health. They don't want to do anything about infant mortality.
That's right.
And so you have these Black women, in particular in Mississippi, oftentimes poor women who are being forced to have children at the risk of their own health and the kids' health. It is absolutely wrong. And
when you talk about Black maternal health care, there is an entire movement surrounding that statistic that you just spoke of 3 times more likely to die while giving birth. That is an alarming statistic that unfortunately continues to grow, and we just have to continue to beat the pavement and lead that conversation, solution-based conversations, so these statistics can start to decrease, if you will. There's been a myriad of examples, highly noted, Serena Williams giving birth to her daughter. Right. She was laying in bed. Now, this is someone who is well noted,
who has
the means, who had to drive it home to her healthcare providers that her body wasn't feeling right, and it was because of that tenacity, her spirit, that they were able to find, I do believe, blood clots that were forming, and as a result, it saved her life. She said, "I probably would have died." So there's a case that we hear about because of the status of Serena Williams. But think about all the women who are suffering and who have lost their lives because of mismanagement with their cases.
Yeah, it's just another reminder that this issue is on the ballot, as are so many other issues. The stakes in this midterm election could not be higher when it comes to the issues that you care about, and so many of the issues that we cover right here on FOXSOUL's Black Report. Now, even though Election Day isn't until Tuesday, November 8th, early voting is already underway in a number of states across the country. According to NBC News, right now, nearly 9 million mail-in and early in-person votes have been cast, of which 50% have been registered Democrats, 32% have been registered Republicans, and 18% other. Nearly 60% of mail-in and early in-person votes have been cast by 65-plus voters, and just over 50% of votes cast have been cast by women. Now, I want y'all to come in close. I want you to come in close. I really want you to hear this next story. If black votes didn't matter, Republicans wouldn't be working so hard to suppress the constitutional right of black voters across the country. This is one of the many takeaways from this next story coming out of Ohio, where two right-wing operatives pleaded guilty on Monday in Cleveland to single felony counts of telecommunications fraud and having placed thousands of false robocalls in Ohio that told people that they could be arrested or be forced to receive vaccinations based on information they submitted in votes by mail. Now, according to the Associated Press, Jacob Wall, 24, of Irvine, California, and Jack Berkman, 56, of Arlington, Virginia, could each receive a year in prison, just a year, when they were sentenced November 29th in common pleas court. Now, the two men were accused of arranging for a voice broadcast service to make about 85,000 robocalls to predominantly black neighborhoods in Ohio, in Michigan, in New York, in Pennsylvania, and Illinois during the run-up to the 2020 general election. Prosecutors said the pair were responsible for 3,500 calls to residents of Cleveland and East Cleveland alone.
Yet another scare tactic.
I mean, just unconscionable. I mean, stories like this just really make me angry.
I can tell.
Because this is what we have been fighting for generations. This is voter suppression on full display, right? And folks shouldn't look away. Again, I can't underscore enough, if black people's votes didn't matter so much, we wouldn't see folks going to such extraordinary lengths to make sure that we couldn't vote, that we were too scared to vote. And this isn't just happening in the states that I name, it's happening in too many states across the country. Yeah,
well, healthcare has been a big part of the politics talk, and we want to say big ups to Mary J. Blige, as she has partnered with First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and the American Cancer Society to raise awareness for prevention and treatment of cervical and breast cancer. The aim of the Cancer Moonshot Initiative is to provide money to, quote, end cancer as we know it. That's according to the First Lady. Now, the Queen of Hip Hop Soul has personal ties to the cause, as she has been advocating for screenings with Black Women's Health in the Imperative organization, as Black women are disproportionately impacted. We've talked about this, Nii Quarterly, across a myriad of health care issues. Mary J. said that she's lost aunts and other family members to breast, cervical, and lung cancer. And I can understand why a cause like this is so dear to her heart. I have also, absolutely, I have lost a mom, unfortunately, to uterine cancer, and our family has concluded that a lot of that was due to the lack of care as a part of the healthcare community that she was part of. She did her part. It was stage 1 when she was diagnosed. We prepared for her surgery, which was to be a full hysterectomy. She was in her late 60s, and when we got there, her appointment was kind of lost in the sauce, for lack of a better explanation, and that surgery was delayed. And during that delay is when that cancer spread, and it spread uncommonly to her brain. And so, it just speaks volumes to how we are continued to be overlooked and maybe put on the back burner when others are not. And so that's just like a personal account of what our family had to endure, because my mother could very well be here. It was survivable.
Yeah. And your mom was a nurse also, right?
She's a part of the medical field,
Right. And so, she knew what to do, and yet and still, the same challenges that impact too many women, particularly Black women across the country, it happened to her too. And so, We got to do better.
We have to
We got to do better. And that's why I'm really glad that, the president and first lady, that they launched this Moonshot cancer project to end cancer as we know it.
Yeah, it was back in 2016, and it's very research heavy to push not only the money that's needed for the research, but also for that research to eventually get us to a cure.
Yeah. And shout out to the American Cancer Society, among so many other research partners out there that are doing the heavy lifting on this.
Indeed. And speaking of the president, President Biden has acknowledged that his age could be a, quote, legitimate concern for voters in 2024, while insisting that he's functioning well despite a string of blunders.
I think it's a legitimate thing to be concerned about anyone's age, including mine. I think that's totally legitimate. But I think the best way to make the judgment is to watch me. Am I slowing up? Don't have the same pace? I think it's a
The 79-year-old president was asked by MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart. Biden has had to confront questions about his age as he considers mounting a re-election campaign that would put him at 86 at the end of the second term. So it's been up for debate. I know there was another recent interview where he seemed to have zoned out, maybe even been accused of falling asleep. So I'm glad that he's being honest with acknowledging that this is absolutely a concern for folks.
It's a concern, and I wonder to what degree will the Biden-Harris ticket be helped with Democrats that feel that, if something were to happen, God forbid, to the president, that the vice president, was sort of, prepared and ready to step in. I think, there are still some question marks that Democrats, have in terms of, whether or not they can have utmost confidence, that the administration would continue to run smoothly. And so I just think it's an opportunity to get the vice president out on bigger stages
and out front more,
and out front, so that people can get to know her and
build that
become
confidence.
More confident.
That's right.
That if the worst case scenario were to happen, that Vice President Harris would be able to step in and not miss a beat.
Right, and that we would be in
I think
good
that's
hands.
sort of the subtext of
it's kind of been lost in translation.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, but on to Illinois, where the city of Evanston's groundbreaking reparations program continues to prompt questions and comments from the community as 38 queries flooded into the town hall hearing just this past Saturday. Now, according to Robin Rue Simmons, she's the chairperson of the Reparations Committee, questions from the public will be answered at the next Reparations Committee meeting on Thursday, November 3rd. Simmons said, quote, "It's hard to celebrate when our racial gaps remain, and in some cases, they're widening. But know that we are on the right path and on the path to repair. Our efforts have inspired the nation with over 100 cities and localities taking steps towards repair, modeling what we've done here in Evanston, and we've also inspired international efforts as well," end quote. In the initial round, 600 applications have been filed for a share of the reparations fund. The first $10 million from cannabis dispensary sales tax will be used to fund reparations in the city. The restorative housing program, the reparations program's first initiative, has already selected 16 recipients, and the funds have been distributed. All right, Evanston. Yay for Evanston.
Good job.
Just another example of what reparations can look like, right? And speaking of what things can look like, New York officials have announced plans for a memorial for the victims of the Buffalo shooting. New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, who was on our show just last week, recently announced the creation of the May 14th Memorial Commission. Now, the commission, which will work to build a permanent memorial to honor the victims of the May 4th deadly mass shooting, establishing the Memorial Commission as a part of the state's long-term commitment to support and uplift the East Buffalo community following the racist attack, the racist white supremacy attack, they said.
And I'm happy to hear this because I know soon after that tragedy, there was talk to shut the grocery store down or to tear it down. And a lot of those residents in and around that area said, no, this is our epicenter. This is not only where we come to grocery shop, this is where we come to meet up and talk. And I do believe there's a section to have coffee and maybe sit down and work on your computer. My brother, who worked in Buffalo for many years as a radio programmer, was just devastated because he was so familiar with that community and how the radio station took part in community events. And Buffalo is a very well tight-knit community, and so the ripple effect is just absolutely devastating. And they were like, no, we need to come back. We need to reopen these doors. We will not be defeated by this hate. He came into our community that was doing just fine. And that also speaks to the whole idea of food deserts. They couldn't afford to lose the grocery store because where else are they going to shop, which is a challenge of a lot of major cities in and around the country, especially if they're heavily Black populated. There's nowhere to grocery shop. So they need it. It was vital to their community. It was the center of their community. So I'm glad to hear that something else has been constructed or will be constructed to memorialize.
And it's just another example of, one of the things that I love that we do as a people, is we remember. We remember whose shoulders we stand upon. We remember, the dearly departed. We remember our ancestors. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a great demonstration towards healing that they have established this commission and that they will erect this memorial in honor of those 10 beautiful souls that were taken from us.
Ripped away.
Far too soon.
Ripped away, absolutely. Victims of the November 2021 Astroworld tragedy have reached a settlement with festival organizers. The family of 21-year-old Axel Acosta reached an unconfirmed settlement with Live Nation. Sources tell TMZ that neither Travis Scott nor his team have had any discussions about those settlements. So we'll have to keep our ears open as maybe some more of that information comes about to see how that was settled. It was a big to-do, and really you would think it would have sidetracked his career. I think he kind of went on and is still doing Travis Scott, but of course for these families, these victims, life has changed drastically, and in our country, we get paid for our hurt and the disruptions in our lives.
And to Travis Scott's credit, I know he had reached out to I think at least 5 of the families to offer to pay for funeral costs, and they rejected that offer. And so I think he's been making attempts to right this wrong. I don't think anybody intended for the folks to die at that concert. Nobody goes on tour only to have their fans, sort of die in a tragic incident like that.
Yeah.